Joe.
Jacques.
What's the difference between a good joke and a bad joke timing?
Carnival personnel was recorded in a dank, moldy basement.
Joe and Jacques. It's Carnival personnel. Joe and Jacques. To their wives, this show is their personal hell. Well, the show sounds the same every single week. Pats are great, Trump is lame, and Joe barely speaks. Who you think still listening? Who you think still listening? Besides Jim and Biff, yeah. And don't forget Richard. Here's a random review. No one cares about you two, Joe and Jacques. Joe and Jacques, Joe and Jacques, Joe and Jacques.
Welcome to Carnival Personnel. I'm Joe.
I'm Jacques, and that completely took me by surprise.
It's the little things in life, you know?
Anyways, welcome to Carnival Personnel. Joe, that was an amazingly nice surprise way to start the show, and I have a little surprise for Joe that I was going to give him before we got there. Joe's responsibility is for doing everything associated with the show.
Wrong.
Except the opening bad joke.
Fake news.
I bring the snacks, but I have a little snack surprise for Joe.
I can't believe it. He's unzipping his pants. No,
So
it's a cooler.
it's a full cooler.
And it has the bear logo on it, so it must be a brains. And a tuna sandwich, a tab, and a couple of Twinkies. You son of a bitch. That's what I got him for one of his birthdays years ago, so thank you for this. Oh, my God.
We were at, like last week or the week before, we were at a store, like Joe and I. Because, you know, there's nothing couples like doing when he's opening the tuna sandwich.
I'm hungry.
And we were getting some, like, soda and some beer for the show and for Joe's party. And he's like, oh, my God, they have a case of Tab here. And I was like, wow, I don't know the last time I saw it. So after the podcast, on the way home, I went back and I picked up the case of Tab. So half case, to be honest, like the 12-pack.
Hey, what could make a basement smell better?
Nothing other than a tuna fish sandwich from the gas station near my house.
Well, you know, you left it in the cooler, and the cooler, I think the ice pack melted. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I eat this.
Well, I picked it up this morning, and I'm like, if I don't put this in the car now, I will forget it. And the whole show, thus week, will be ruined. Anyways, as Joe miles away.
So that's what dysentery tastes like.
But, you know, my true gift to Joe, food poisoning from the gas station tuna sandwich. Welcome to Carnival Personnel.
Okay.
Not necessarily with half a tuna. No one's taking the tuna fish sandwich away, Joe. You can relax. Fine dining is not supposed to be rushed.
I grew up in the Depression. Oh, wait, no, I grew up with Depression.
Yeah, see, it's that thin line between clever and stupid, as they would say in Spinal Tap. So, Joe, lots going on this week. You know, there's you know, the disaster that everybody's talking about. You know, what our country is dealing with is unprecedented as ways of these unprecedented storms. And of course, I'm talking about the Patriots losing the opening game this season.
I thought we weren't going to talk about that.
We aren't. We'll talk about that later.
That's our gift to our audience. Because the Patriots lost. Not a lot of Patriots talk this week.
Not a lot of Patriots talk. But it's you know, it's one of those things, as you said so well the other day when I was pointing out, you know, it's a 500-year storm. Harvey has just wreaked havoc on Houston and the surrounding areas, and I can't imagine anything worse. To which you said,
I forgot.
hold my beer.
Oh, right, yeah, right. Well, Irma said hold my beer.
Irma said hold my beer. Yeah, so that looks like a lot of fun headed towards Florida, and like probably, so this is Sunday night, and you know, by the time this podcast is put up there, it would have probably ripped through half of South Florida by now.
Right now, if you're listening, it's probably Monday, and it's rip-roaring through the Tampa area, up the west coast of Florida, toward Tennessee, I think, is where it's going to land. That's where the plotting is. It's supposed to be landed. But there's also, don't worry, There is also Hurricane Jose coming in through the Caribbean, which looks like it's going to curl out and not hit the U.S. But
yeah, well, if we had that wall up, Jose wouldn't be able to get in here.
well, he'd help build it.
He'd help build it. Now,
Or he would pay for
we
it.
put it up, right. We put it up to keep him out, but then he would have to pay for it.
I'm forgetting what's going on.
And the great thing is, well, not the great thing is, like we talked about it, my favorite awful meme that was great, it's a back of a semi-truck that's completely empty, and it said the first truckload of hopes and prayers arrived in Houston last week. So again, doing what we can. We donated, or Joe did independently. The podcast did it. We never took any of that defunct sponsor.
The royal we.
The royal we. So it's the same thing. Last week we had a 500-year storm, which, as I understood it, is a storm that should probably only happen once every 500 years. And here it is within one podcast.
I think we're binge storming. I think that's what the country is doing now. Binge storming.
Right.
Right. Getting in all the storms that would do for the last century in 1 year.
But luckily we've had, almost one a year somewhere, like in, somewhere around like the world, that we never pay attention to all the other awful hurricane tsunamis everywhere else. But it's not just the United States. See, global warming doesn't just affect us.
I wonder if Trump's running like a storm pageant,
Right,
where like
exactly.
we're going to bring in all the greatest storms, and then we're going to vote on who's the hottest storm at the end of the year.
So a couple, back to back, and in Houston we had the born again Bible thumper, holier than thou Osteen. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, Osteen.
Osteen, who didn't open his church. This week's douchebag of the week, and it's not funny that he's not the douchebag every week, but he's been off the radar for a while. Rush Limbaugh.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Kirk Cameron, but go on.
No, wait, okay,
Pump the brakes.
Hey, or as I had once said, the funniest white guy on. What was the network he was on?
Oh,
at the time?
UPN.
UPN, yeah, when he had the UPN show. But he, come on, start with our good friend Kirk Cameron.
So I understood that Kirk Cameron has blamed the latest rash of hurricanes, of course, not on global warming, because that's stupid, but on something bad that humans did as moral people.
Right. He's one of those people. Like you have the people when New Orleans, had Katrina saying, well, that's just such a sinful city that's God's way of rationing out, like, his dislike with what goes on in that city. And then, of course, you had, some people coming out, and for 20 plus years, the mayor of Houston was a lesbian, an open lesbian, woman. And that was part of the reason that it hit, Houston instead of Texas.
Well, now I know why. That rationale actually kind of works because, our president's home is Mar-a-Lago, which is in Florida.
Right, okay.
So yeah.
Fair enough.
Hey.
So from one podcast to the next, you have two 500-year storms. But in between, the appointed head of NASA is a climber science denier.
Yeah.
The head of NASA.
Barney Rubble cosplayer. Have you seen this guy's neck? No, because it just goes from chin to torso.
You're right. Good looking dude.
Right.
But why do most of the client deniers look like that?
I don't understand. Yeah.
But the douchebag that I was talking about this week wasn't the new head of NASA who doesn't believe in climate change. No, this week it's Rush Limbaugh.
Why?
He was ranting all week about the Hurricane Harvey, you know what I mean? And it's like, well, now that Irma's coming, it's a liberal hoax. Hoax. He's out there, telling millions around the world that it's a liberal hoax, but then what's the first person to get on a private plane and get out of town?
See, I wonder about that because how deep did his liberal hoax theory go? Like, how much of a hoax was Harvey? What about Harvey was hoax? Like that that the origins of Harvey being climate change was a hoax?
Right, and it's also a money grab, and that we over-exaggerate.
Oh, like the devastation wasn't as big as the media has portrayed it to be.
The what?
The liberal media.
Right, the what?
The liberal Jew-run media? I don't know how far to go.
Because it's all, you're right. It's a liberal-run media, it's a Jew-run media, it's the fake news, say whatever you want.
All right.
But it all starts with climate. This has nothing to do with climate change. But he was saying the evacuation from Florida is ridiculous, this is a hoax, this is to panic everybody. Is my plane ready?
Yeah.
And that was not the funny thing. One of the interesting things this week is how all the airlines have had to deal with this, how the cruise ships, because I've been to Miami a number of times working Dolphin games, and it is absolutely crazy how many of these huge ocean liners you see coming and going. I mean, it's honestly like a freeway out in the sea, and how many of these ocean liners were either taking off from there this weekend, who either left early, just we're canceling your trip, we're going. Who's ever on the ship, great, we're going out to sea to ride this out. Ones that were at sea in the Caribbean made a quick stop in Miami and said, whoever wants to get off, get off. If this is your stop, great. If it's not and you want to get off, great. Otherwise, we're going out to sea to ride this out. And we don't know if we're going to be out there 2-3 days, 4 or 5 days, but you had a gauge. All private planes, whether they're single engine planes, jet planes, and everything in between, got the hell out, are looking for parking spaces, states away and stuff like that to get out of the path of this. And then, of course, the airlines, same thing, canceling flights in there at the same time. I mean, scrambling. When you think about those, passenger airlines, first of all, it's expensive to park them. That's why, for years, JetBlue didn't come to Boston, because it costs so much more to park at Logan than it did at Providence or it did in Manchester, New Hampshire. But there's only so many places to put these planes, and you got 4 or 5 major airports on the path of this hurricane that have to get out of Dodge. And then Joe and I talked about this week. Why don't you tell us how some of the airlines had dealt with this tragedy?
Delta with. More specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and Chelsea Handler actually tweeted out this picture on her Twitter that Delta had bumped like a flight. It was like a short, almost, you'd call it like a puddle jumper kind of thing from Miami to, I don't know, Shreveport or something. I don't know, someplace very close by.
One way.
One way. It went from like, $600 to like $3,500.
And that was the norm.
Right. But of course, prices are subject to change. So buyer beware. And buyer, fuck you.
And seriously, at what point first of all, what kind of scumbag, and we talked about this sadly last week in Houston, people selling cases of water for like $45.
Yeah, that was a Best Buy store. And, of course, there's always, it's not the corporation's fault. That was one manager of one Best Buy store.
Best Buy, or as Joe likes to call them, a future defunct sponsor of Carnival Personnel Podcast.
By the way, Best Buy bought out one of our defunct sponsors, Sam Goody, in 2000.
Well, I mean, so they had to jack up the water in order to afford advertising on our show. I mean, the Blue Apron people can't even get in the door here.
It was for a good cause.
So you do, and then you go by and you think about all the great PR that airplanes, that these companies have had over the last few years. But honestly, something like this comes up and you see it as a money grab. There's a special place in hell right next to all the lawyers for you.
Yeah. Well, you know what I don't understand is
Sorry,
that
John.
The airlines are going to be doing this probably forever. Like, this is the norm.
It is the norm. Norm!
Yeah. This is not going to change unless we come up with, unless a company like, SpaceX or something comes up with a teleportation system, something faster, because, hey, you want to get from, Los Angeles to Boston in, less than 17 years.
But to your point, then you have people like JetBlue, who now many of the other airlines, after seeing the shit that Delta took, jumped in line, and JetBlue was the first people to say, we're capping it. That's it. It's $99 to $139 one way. Get out of town as fast as you can type thing. That's the kind of PR. Yeah, they could make an extra $100,000, $200,000 by jacking up the prices, or they can get about $10 million of good free press and goodwill.
Right, but then they also have their limitations. Like they're understaffed. They're almost like they're a budget airline for a reason. They're not carrying a lot of overhead with their pilots, with their flight staff. You're going to hear stories come down the line about you, and we've heard these in like decades before, how these smaller budget airlines would run their pilots ragged. They'd be sleeping in dumpsters overnight because they had 2 hours between shifts.
Well, no, they've changed a lot of those rules because they've had to and stuff. But I mean, for years when we would live in LA, the 20 years I lived in LA, once JetBlue started to come to first Manchester and Manchester, New Hampshire. So where my family lives, it's halfway between Logan going, a half hour south, Manchester, New Hampshire going a half hour north. And the bummer thing about going to Manchester, you couldn't get direct flights. They had to have smaller planes that went there. But it was worth it to have a layover somewhere to fly JetBlue. And the same thing, JetBlue didn't fly out of LAX. They flew out of Long Beach, so we would have to drive there. But it was worth it because the JetBlue, they were the first. The guy who owns JetBlue bought DirecTV, put on all the flights. That was like the first flight that said, here's free TV. And yeah, so different airline. But the whole point of this is they didn't see it as a money grab, and then all the other airlines followed suit and saw, oh, JetBlue's getting all this good press and good PR and just, what's that term? Doing the right fucking thing, helping people get out of town as quickly as you can. And so, like I said, I mean, you can choose to be a complete scumbag, a Rush Limbaugh, a Kirk Cameron, a Delta airline,
A Donald Trump.
or you can be a decent human being. So so these disasters bring out the best of people. It also brings out the worst. And talking about the best of people, we talked about it at length last week. What J.J. Watt had been doing in Houston and still continues to do. $28 million is the last count of what he had raised, and I think he wanted to. He was trying to get his hands on a couple trucks to come in with stuff. And I think he was trying to raise like a few $100,000. So this went well beyond what he had expected.
Good for him and good for the Houston community for just kind of pulling together.
Right, and it wasn't like, I mean, he doesn't get paid more by the NFL for doing this. Yeah, his image goes up, and he will forever be a hero there. He probably would have been a hero because he's the best defensive player in the league, but it's great to see the best part of that and stepping up. And so hopefully, the pro sports teams, and Tampa and Miami, who are a big part of those communities, step up as well.
Yep, I believe they would.
So that's great. So what else is going on that I wanted to talk about, because it's all about me? The important things facing our time right now, Joe.
What?
Movies.
That's right. Well, okay. I didn't know if I was going to read right off the paper.
So we were talking the other night. Like Joe asked, "Hey, what is the release date of Star Wars?" Because there are certain movies that to Joe and I are holidays. No, Joe, when's your anniversary? Exactly. But you don't ask me either. 'Cause I don't know when your anniversary is.
Hi-oh.
But big movies like that, we will take, Joe will take the day off of work. I will take the day off of
something.
Right. And then,
parenting.
And then,
no, wait. This is actually more parenting.
Yeah, you have to start doing something before you can stop doing something, Joe. And for my parenting tips of the week, I think we know how much parenting is being done at my house by me. But so I did not know that.
No.
I did not know the exact date. So I went online to find out. And I wanted to make sure I knew when, some of the movies that I really want to see, like, Blade Runner and...
Yeah, let's just go down the list.
Okay. So it opens tonight, and...
It opened on Friday.
It opened on Friday.
You got to think fourth dimensionally, man.
Here's the great thing. Management lives in fear of clowns. What was that phobia that we talked about when we had fun bags on the show? We had our friend Tracy, who's a professional clown on. There's a name for a phobia, and she truly has this. Like, she saw it on TV. She saw it and Killer Clowns from Outer Space when she was, a wee lass, and has scared the shit out of her forevermore. I mean, when we lived in Venice Beach, you would have these, roaming clowns on the beach, doing balloon animals for kids and stuff like that, and handing out like candy from windowless vans. And if she saw one like a block or two away, we would either go down an alley and walk completely the long way around, or if she spotted it last minute, she would go from like, my left to my right and squeeze my arm, like almost snap the bone in half. She'd be so terrified. However, she's going to see it. She's right now, as we're doing this podcast, she is seeing it at the movie theater Chunky's. For those of you not in the New England area, Chunky's is a movie chain that has like tables and these really big chairs with table service for food, like a full menu and stuff like that, a bar and a full menu. Chunkies that let people know. Come to Chunky's, get the 5D experience as clowns will randomly be walking through the theater.
Oh my God.
So it's one of those things where that scares the living shit out of her, just the thought, but she couldn't wait to get there. So if you hear screams coming out of the greater Nashua area Chunky's tonight, don't call 911. It's just management having a complete freak out.
And then, so a couple of more weeks, we have The Kingsman, sequel, right?
Yeah, The Kingsman, which I really, really liked the first one. But I like the big budget action shoot 'em ups. It's kind of a James Bond meets like an Avengers type movie type thing. So that was really great. Lego Ninja. Am I going to say
Ninjago?
That? I never say that right.
Any N word. You stammer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't want to offend.
Don't say. Because, off the air, I say it,
Right.
every fourth or fifth word I throw that out
You're
there?
not allowed to say Ninjago. That's their word.
That's their word. Like the Lego movie, one of my favorite movies ever. Lego Batman is really, it's in my top 10 favorite Batman movies. And you're like, oh yeah, top 10. Really a stretch there. There's about 20,
There's 20 that Jacques has seen. Yeah.
Just in the past 2 weeks alone. So that looks like a lot of fun. A lot of those pun-driven movies, a lot of play, like his father, abandoned him and his name's Lloyd. And he calls, what does he call it?
Lloyd.
Lloyd. Flatliners. That's not one of my movies, but it's another one that management can't wait to go see. A remake of that. And then Blade Runner. And that's one of those movies. When you think about Harrison Ford, it is seriously, in the past 50 years, has there been a bigger actor? I mean, he's not the number one box office draw now or the last 10 years, but since 1977, how many people are parts of, it used to be trilogies. He used to be the only person, who was in 2 trilogies of that level. Because you can't put, can you put on one hand the numbers of trilogies that rival Star Wars?
No, I mean, it's astounding. You have like the Star Trek.
Right, you got Star Trek. Do it really quickly.
It's a franchise.
Think about the franchises that you put on level, or at least
Rocky.
in the same realm.
You have
Okay,
Stallone with Rocky and Rambo.
Yep, it had their time.
Yeah, but Star Wars.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future was a trilogy, but that was sort of like
Indiana Jones.
Yes, I know. Yeah,
so that's the amazing thing.
He was in both the Indiana Jones quadrilogy. Now, soon to be quintuple trilogy when Indy 5 comes out, and the Star Wars movies. He was in 4 Star Wars movies.
But then Blade Runner is one of those movies that Blade Runner is doing a midnight showing somewhere every Saturday night somewhere in America.
Never seen it.
It's one of those classic, revolutionary, stop what you're doing, change how, you look at your life type thing.
We need to do a podcast where we talk about movies that we've never seen. Like, you've never seen Blade Runner?
Right. I didn't see Goonies.
Right.
Joe's management still isn't talking to me when she found out I didn't see Goonies.
She'll lift the embargo soon. Don't worry.
So Blade Runner's coming out, and it looks absolutely awesome. Hopefully Harrison Ford doesn't get killed in this one too. Oh, did I just ruin it? Did I just ruin the last Star Wars that came out 2 years ago?
Oh, come on.
And then the one that I'm conflicted of. My dog is named Loki. There's a number of people who went to college with me, thanks to my really good friend, my artist friend, Tina Enos, who Google her. She's one of the best photo artists I've ever known or I've ever met. I don't think she knows my real name because she met me like first week of Fitchburg and she called me Thor, because I very Thor-like hair, and of course the build to match. But I'm very conflicted about the new Thor movie, mostly because they cut Thor's hair.
So did you.
Yeah, you're right. So, and then the one that is going to define my children's childhood, Justice League comes out November 17th, and that will probably be the first movie that I let my oldest son do a midnight showing for. Like, I'll let him get off the bus, I'll give him some Benadryl, let him take a 2-3 hour nap, get him up at 9, and we'll go. That will be his first midnight showing of a movie. No, that's not my parenting tip of the week, but
Giving your kids Benadryl and knocking them out right after school. That should be everybody's parenting tip.
I think that was week 1 or week 2, too.
Oh, right. Man.
But Justice League, and then we go. Star Wars comes out. The big. But then and that one still conflicted about because of course ruining the Force Awakens. There's not going to be a Harrison Ford in this one,
right? And there's not going to be a Carrie. Spoilers: there's not going to be a Carrie Fisher in Episode 9.
Right. Carrie. The sad irony. Other than Carrie Fisher dying, Carrie Fisher dies. Harrison Ford's alive. They wrote out the wrong character. Kylo Ren stabbed the wrong parent in this movie. Had he only had the foresight. And then I'm not sure. The boy saw the preview for I never say that.
Jumanji?
Word. Jumanji. Thank you. And I'm like, how much money? I don't think he's a bad actor, but how much money am I going to give The Rock? How much have I given The Rock the last 20 years? How much am I going to give Rock over the next 20?
Yeah, I mean, well, it looks like it's an interesting premise because the original Jumanji movie with Robin Williams from the 90s was about a board game that if you play it, the jungle setting would come to life. So everybody's seen Jumanji, I think, by now. So Jumanji: Welcome to the Jungle is instead of a board game, it's a video game, man. And you enter the video game. So that's a little weird. Like it's not like the video game characters are coming into the real world. The players get sucked. Their avatars get sucked into the video game worlds, and then their avatars are tropes of video game characters. So the players themselves don't look like their avatar. So like a wimpy kid is playing The Rock in the video game world.
Right, the hot girl.
Right, who is Karen Gillan from Guardians of the Galaxy and Doctor Who. She's like the Lara Croft character.
Well, who becomes Jack Black?
I forget. I mean,
one of the girls. One of the girls becomes
right.
Jack Black.
Oh, the hot girl becomes Jack Black.
Right, okay.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the hot girl in the
Yeah,
game.
no.
Yeah.
And what game system were they playing? Because they were in the high school in the old AV room.
Oh yeah. Oh, I don't know if they were playing like a GameCube or if they were playing a more modern system.
Is it a system that is down in your man cave down here?
I haven't dissected the trailer enough.
I'm safely going to say yes.
Right.
It's better than a 50-50 chance.
If it's not the Sega Master System, then yes.
Then otherwise, and then Daddy's Home, which not the biggest Mark Wahlberg fan, but seriously, that will definitely be a Redbox one because Will Ferrell's and those kind of movies. Those are what he's supposed to be doing.
I'm a bit conflicted because I'm not sure if this is true or not. I don't know anything much more about Daddy's Home 2 than I do about Daddy's Home 1, which is nothing. But in the thumbnail to the trailer on YouTube, I saw Mel Gibson. Is he in Daddy's Home too? Is he like the grandfather in Daddy's Home too?
We can only because if there's one thing Hollywood's missing is anti-Semites,
right?
So, and then I because I'm really old and like movies that are much older than me is the remake of Murder on the Orient Express looks absolutely amazing. That's a rundown of the big movies coming out this fall and winter. And so, I put together the ones that, are expected to do the most at the box office, that are already getting the most press. We got 12 movies that we just talked about, Joe. These are supposed to be the biggest movies this fall and this winter. Quickly looking at the list, there's a through line that connects all these movies.
There's sequels and remakes.
Every one.
Yeah.
Every single one is a sequel or a remake. The only other movie that we didn't talk about that I'm really, really, really looking forward to see is called The Disaster Artist. It became a big thing in L.A. about 10 years ago. There was a movie in 2004 called The Room, and it was supposed to be harken back to Ed Wood, a really, really bad movie with really bad acting that somehow saw the light of day.
Not to be confused with the Academy Award nominated and possibly winning Room.
Right. The Room, completely different. And it is. And so it became, I don't know if everywhere else, but in LA, it became the newest version of the midnight show movies that they do.
Oh, like Rocky Horror.
Rocky Horror. It became a Rocky Horror. And on Sunset Strip in LA, every Friday and Saturday night, there was a midnight screening of The Room, that all these A-listers started to go see, and it became a buzz thing. That they are now turning in the making of the movie into a real big movie with DeFranco and Seth Rogen and a bunch of other.
It's a dramatic retelling of the making of the movie,
Which is funny because they ended up working with the people who were in the room to actually make this, and it looks just Google the trailer. It's worth the Google. It looks awesome. So I will take the oldest little guy out of school on Friday so that he can go to a Thursday night showing of Justice League. Because look, seriously, what is he going to learn that one Friday? And he will always remember the first time his dad let him go to a midnight showing of one of these huge movies.
Yeah. So I agree with that.
Yeah. So I'm pretty stoked about.
I'm also a bad parent. So that's take it for
all right, so that wraps up our movie recommendations and talk. But it is crazy how they're all sequels, prequels, or remakes.
Yeah, and I guess the next sort of movie-esque thing maybe we can talk about briefly is that crowdsourced Boston Back to the Future project that I was working on with my son Connor. So we've wrapped and submitted our scenes, and Connor is actually going to be in one of the scenes submitted for the Back to the Future.
Correction, he is the scene.
He's the scene stealer, right? If you're looking for scenes, it's at my house because Connor stole them all. So if you don't know, there's a thing called Crowdsource Boston. I guess every year a group of filmmakers and public access communities get together in the Boston, New England area to recreate iconic movies. Last year they did Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. This year it's Back to the Future, and the Arlington Public Access Station is recreating a couple of scenes. I was involved more heavily in one of them, and Connor was heavily involved in another scene. And the scenes were submitted. They look great. They're going to add another group is adding the soundtrack to it in the next couple of weeks. So the rough cuts were made available privately, and we saw them, and they look pretty good considering the limitations, that the filmmakers had. But I think it's going to be worth a Google, and I'm not sure when we know the premiere dates and all that location. Of course, you'll hear it here at some point during the Carnival Personnel podcast.
I have absolutely nothing to do with any of this except I dragged Joe to a meeting to the Arlington cable station to talk about, doing a project there. And I saw the poster and I volunteered, like, hey, everybody interested in doing this should take 2 steps forward. And I did the Three Stooges thing where I took 2 steps back and there's Joe. And they're like, oh, you like Back to the Future? And he took the reins. But somehow because of that, I wound up on their mailing list.
Right.
And I got to see this. And really, I mean, I don't really like Joe. His kids are horrible, but I saw it and I'm like, dude, this is, so when I say this, it's not just being nice to a buddy and his kid. It was really great. It was really, really fun to see. I'm very much looking forward to the public screening of this.
Yeah, so it'll be fun.
We usually talk, start the show by talking about the horrible things that POTUS did. But, after what happened Thursday night, I really didn't want to. Well, not only did I not want to be negative, I just couldn't. So, but we'll dive into everybody's favorite topic of Jacques getting out of soapbox, telling everybody how awful POTUS is, and Joe, being a lot smarter and more thoughtful with his responses. The shocking thing is this week, there are other podcasts by people, let's say, on the other side of the political fence, absolutely furious with their presidents. Trump actually has made now, let me preface this. We haven't turned a corner. There hasn't been that presidential pivot. He isn't working with the other side of the aisle as much as it's being led to believe at this point. The debt ceiling is reached. And remember about 2 months ago, he was saying, if they don't put money in the wall, that the Republicans should shut down the government.
Yeah, I remember that.
He was really pushing hard. The last time, the government shutdown happened, it didn't look too good for them. And the time before that, it didn't look too good for them. But he was saying that the Republicans should play hardball, that, if there isn't money in it for the wall, that they should call the Democrats bluff and not raise the debt ceiling and shut down the government. Back to the whole drain the swamp thing, says a guy surrounded by Goldman Sachs executives. But surprisingly to everybody, including, Democrat, Chuck Schumer, the Democrats and POTUS came to an agreement on a 3-month extension of, the debt ceiling. And it was voted on by all the Democrats and just a handful of Republicans. And now all the Republican people are like, he used to be a Democrat. Now he's switching parties. I can't believe he betrayed us like this. And it's just funny to hear all the other people talk like you and I do every week that I can't believe he did something this awful.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can't add, and I really can't add anything to this because I didn't read up on it. I was too caught up. You hyped me up so much for the Patriots that I forgot about everything else this week.
I did, and we will. Don't worry, we will get into the Patriots, but the talk will be about more than the game. Lucky you to everybody. No, the funny thing is, it's like I listened to Chuck Schumer on another show, and he was saying, was it Chuck Schumer saying they make this agreement, and they couldn't believe he called saying, do you watch Fox News? And he's like, not really, Mr. President. He goes, they're saying really good things about you on Fox News. Can you believe they're saying good things about a Democrat on Fox News? And on MSNBC, they're saying good things about me. And he's like, I can only imagine the look on his face is like, yeah, that's not how I run politics based on today's news, this 15-minute news cycle. But either way, hey, you take a win how you can get it.
Yeah, W is a W.
And the fact that he worked and begrudgingly, there's a little bit of my soul that's dying more than the little bit that dies every day when I wake up and I wake up. But the fact that something semi-positive happened, again, it's a 3-month thing. It could all go to shit come Monday morning. But for right now, it's just nice to know that, the other side is completely freaking out. So we're kind of saying something almost positive about POTUS, which is weird. And now Joe and I had this talk the other day. Hillary's book comes out this week.
Yes, the book titled What Happened?
Oh, I thought it was titled Everybody Around Me Fucked Up and I Was Perfect and I Don't Know why I Lost.
Yeah. So I'm only going off of excerpts that were circulated on social media, the liberal social media. But it looks to me that the consensus, I guess, is that Hillary Clinton has blamed the Bernie bros and the Bernie Sanders campaign for kind of blowing up the Democratic Party and just saying,
you go down the list of just in our lifetime, and you had Ross Perot fuck things up for George Bush Sr. He took away votes more from the Republicans than the Democrats, and that really helped Bill Clinton. You fast forward, and the same thing, happened. A couple other times where you have these third-party candidates that aren't realistic candidates, but just will pull enough from one.
Yeah, like the
party.
Ralph Nader.
The Ralph Nader. Yeah, Ralph Nader. I mean, his body of work over the years for the American people, second to none. We probably don't have we don't have seatbelts for another 10, 15, 20 years if it's not for Ralph Nader.
Right.
And you can go down the list of Ralph Nader's accomplishments. And one of his accomplishments is costing a Democrat a presidential seat, which caused 2 Supreme Court seats like during that cycle. But you have this. Bernie, full disclosure, I'm not anti-Hillary. I've never been anti-Hillary. There's a lot of things I like about, Hillary Clinton. One of the things I like about Hillary Clinton is, and I remember some people saying, well, Bill's going to be in there and people are also going to defer to Bill and he's going to be in on decisions and he's going to be, taking meetings with people around the world. I'm like, so 2 really well-liked world figures,
Yeah, we don't want to have a qualified relative of the president being sitting next to the prime minister of Japan.
Right.
Let's put Ivanka fucking Trump there. Now that's a person that should be sitting with world leaders.
If Hillary has to take a bathroom break and Bill sits in at the G20 summit,
yeah.
I think everybody at the table's okay with that.
Yeah.
So I mean, I thought that was great. On the other hand, I've been a Bernie supporter for 12 years. He did a weekly segment called Brunch with Bernie on a talk show, the Tom Hartman show that I like very much. So I've been a Bernie fan forever. What I also love about Bernie is how he got the youth energized. I have a niece who is a college junior this year, who last year really, really got involved to the point where her mom and her drove up to Bernie headquarters in Vermont. You know, they took a day trip up there because she wanted to not buy a T-shirt and bumper sticker online, but actually wanted to go make a donation in person. Not her mom gave her money that she was then donating. This is money that she earned. She's a hardworking kid that she put into the Bernie coffers, that she really got energized. She started reading the political things. She started talking to her friends. She went to Bernie rallies. And to see, you know, this 70-year-old guy from Vermont energizing an 18-year-old like base and getting, you know, kids really not just to pay attention, but to actively become part of it. It was awesome to see. And I liked what he said. And of course, you know, my sister with two, you know, daughters in college, struggling to help them. They're struggling with the college debt they're going to have forever. For somebody to come by and say, hey, I'd rather you struggle to be paying your mortgage for the next 20 years and paying off a college loan the next 20 years. I've been a Bernie guy. I also like that, like Bernie had said, look, he's staying in it to the end. There's been people who've been donating to him from day one. And if he drops out before the primary happens in their state, he's taking away their right to pull the lever for him. And so as a courtesy almost to the people who've been supporting him, he stayed on the ticket. But at the same time, and I agree, you look at where Hillary started. She was, you know, no free college. Bernie was free college to Hillary coming to free 2-year college type thing. I mean, and it did. It pushed her, you know, more to that side, which, you know, it also pushed like the Democratic thing. She didn't lose because of Bernie Sanders. I think she became a better candidate. Yes. A lot of Bernie bros probably didn't, and I shouldn't just say bros because, you know, everybody I know who was supporting Bernie voted for Hillary. Or some didn't vote once Bernie dropped out? Did some also hear? Because don't forget, if you go down, you take out the racism and a lot of
Please.
if you can, from Trump's rhetoric, he also had some very Bernie-esque ideas that he was pushing out there. I mean, he was also out there railing against Wall Street and the big banks. Now, of course, his entire administration is Goldman Sachs, but he was saying very Bernie-esque things about attacking banks and Wall Street has too much power.
It sounds like he was playing like a guy who wanted to win the presidency and saying anything that people wanted to hear. And maybe not intending on sticking with those promises.
And look, I mean, I still wake up, I'm like, I fucking can't believe it. And look, you know, I'm quite sure, you know, on February 5th, 2008, Brady woke up that morning. I can't believe we're 18-1. I can't believe it. He probably spent the entire offseason just fuming that he didn't win. So it's got to be the hardest thing to imagine. Hillary not losing the presidency. She lost to him.
Yeah.
The creepiest, racist, absolute worst person you can ever imagine. She lost to him. And I don't know if the book is self-serving or is like, you know, the start of our podcast, you know, therapy for her. But the biggest problem I've always said facing the party that, you know, I'm part of is the lack of unity. I mean, honestly, 9 months later, we're still fighting about this.
Well, they were saying that about the Republican Party, too. And that is the Republican Party destroyed? Is it dead?
Well, that's what they were saying in October of last year.
Yeah. So
not saying it now because they've been unified.
Yeah. So, but I don't know if there's not so much of a lack of. I don't know if there's a lack of unity per se, but I do want to say that there is a lack of fresh blood. Yeah.
So so this past week, the love of my life, the woman who gets me out of bed every morning and gives me hope and keeps me going, Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Seriously, she entered politics full of fire and brimstone, and these big banks are ruining everything, and I'm going to do what I can. She's lived up to that. Like she's lived up to it so much. She's had Democrats trying to remove her from different councils. I mean, because there's a lot of Democrats who rely on hedge funds and Wall Street and banks, the big bankers. She's been a ferocious. I hate to say pit bull because that's a stereotype about dogs. She's been but she has been ferocious. She's, against it, and she's not stopped. And her and Bernie have aligned on a lot of things, and now they have really teamed up on single payer. And that's been a push of Bernie's for 20 plus years. He's been pushing this. Now he's getting other support from not just Democrats, major Democrats. And a lot of people talked about this week. It's like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie in 2020. You know, this is the next ticket. And I'm a little excited about that because I like both. I hesitate because these are two really effective, great leaders in the Senate for the Democrats that exposes 2 seats. But Joe, you jumped in and you said,
Can't they find somebody younger?
like, and you don't mean like 25 or 30.
Right. I mean, well, so here's the thing. It's like we're all about, I guess most people who are fed up with business as usual are against, career politicians. These are people who have been in the system for decades. They're in, everybody's in their pocket, this and that. Yet there's no Barack Obama to step up and sort of like there's one. Remember Cory Booker?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Cory Booker, I mean, he's still he's still serving the public, right?
And he's still doing a great. I mean, the funny thing about and I could not agree with you more, but when we say we as a party, the royal we as you have put out there, is there a Barack Obama that we just don't know yet? Because who was Barack Obama before he was on the public scene like this? He was a one-term junior senator from Illinois. So maybe there's somebody out there that we're not, because of all the bullshit we don't know is working. But
Barack Obama also came to fame nationally at the 2004
right. When his first term.
When he was at the John Kerry Democratic Convention, he came out as a keynote speaker, and he gave us a rousing speech like, who the hell is this guy, and why is he firing up all the goodness in my heart?
And he was also voted against the war in Iraq.
Yeah.
He was like one of the few dissenting votes.
Yeah. But no, like you go down the list of all the prominent Democratic leaders. You have Nancy Pelosi. Okay, whatever. Then you have...
Hot.
Yeah. Bernie Sanders.
Hot.
Elizabeth Warren.
Dibs.
Chuck Schumer.
Wait.
Amy Schumer. Hey now.
Dibs.
Right. So, but seriously, there's like, where's the fresh meat? I mean, you have like all these sort of weird, fresh, like these kind of creepy, almost fresh-faced people on the Republican side that make appearances on Fox News and all these other talk shows.
They also made appearances on MSNBC and on CNN. They were holding Nazi flags draped in,
Yeah.
But there was a bunch of fresh.
Where is the Democratic Hitler youth? Is what I'm asking.
Thank you.
Right.
Where's our Hitler?
What? That's our Hitler.
But again,
this is all boring. Let's move on.
Well, no, I just want to touch on the what I always like to call the while you were sleeping or lost in the shuffle. The worst part about POTUS is the people and I mean this. The worst part of him isn't the Russians, isn't his family. It's the people that he's appointing to prominent positions. And he's, and so far the worst is Betsy DeVos, who last week when we talked about Betsy DeVos, 2 weeks ago, she's repealed all the Obama initiatives about college funding and private colleges and the extortion that they have. And then last week it was, she appointed the dean of DeVry University, who just paid out a huge settlement for fraud and defrauding students.
Very presidential.
She appointed that guy to take over, the task force against what he just paid out for. This week she's repealing Title IX, saying that there's too many false reports of sexual, like rape on campuses and sexual abuse, and that there's too many women out there crying wolf. And think about all these poor men who are now late. And it happens. It does happen. The Duke lacrosse people will be scarred for life over something that never happened. Yeah. And you can't apologize enough to those kids. It's horrible. Does it happen? Yes. But for every one Duke lacrosse wrongfully accused guy, there is 100.
Exception, not the rule.
There is 1,000, women who don't come forward because of this. And the fact that she's just repealed all the Obama Title IX things that are protections in place. She is just the worst of the worst. So, with that bit of happiness, we'll get off track. But, so I said some not awful things about POTUS, but the long-term effects about who he puts in the Supreme Court will haunt us for 40 years, and the people he has around him, the head of NASA who doesn't believe in climate change, and the head of education who doesn't believe in public education. Other than that...
Well, the only, I guess, silver lining in all of this is that if Trump's administration can just go right down the list of Obama initiatives and repeal all that shit, our only hope as liberal or even moderate or just sane fucking people as a country can vote in a 2020 president that will repeal all the Trump era shit.
Right. But on a happier note, and this will be the quickest Patriot recap. They lost a home opener. Never happens. This is the only time since Gillette Stadium has opened, in the Kraft era and the Belichick era, that Tom Brady has entered the fourth quarter with a lead at home and lost. It's also the first time in a Bill Belichick run team that they gave up 2 touchdown plays of more than 75 yards. It's going to be like 2 seasons ago where it's going to take 4 or 5 games. Like September is their preseason, and I'm not going to hit the panic buttons. Cook, their big wide receiver, they gave up a first-round draft pick, didn't play in the preseason. So this was the first time in game action him and Brady, were together. And yeah, they didn't look like they were gelling,
No, they have to work on that, like that comedy joke. What's the key to a good
timing?
You're right. They have to work on timing.
So, we're not talking a lot about the Patriots. We're not talking a lot about POTUS, but we still have to keep these lights on. And with that, we bring you this week's defunct sponsor.
Nintendo. It's for breakfast now. Nintendo. It's a cereal. Wow. Nintendo. Super Mario Jump. Nintendo. In a fruit-flavored crunch. Nintendo. Here's Zelda too. Nintendo. It's very good news. Nintendo. You just can't. Nintendo cereal system is a super part of this nutritious breakfast. Nintendo. 2 cereals in 1. Wow.
Thank you. Our studio. It's just great to do a live show, Joe.
You're a great crowd, I tell you. Boy, I'll tell you.
So, I come to Joe's humble abode this week, and while waiting him to get all gussied and dressed up, I pull off his bookshelf that I never noticed before. The Ultimate Nintendo Guide to the NES Library, 1985 to 1995.
Written by
on
the bottom.
Pat
Contry. He's also known as Pat the NES Punk on YouTube.
When I say this book is as heavy as your average cinder block or a boulder, I mean, if you were to hit a human being with this, not wearing a football helmet and named Grunk, you would kill the guy.
I was actually worried
about... Or girl, let's not be sexist.
I was worried that when you took that off the shelf, because that was a load-bearing book. Like, I needed that to structurally hold that shelf together.
And I'm flipping through it, and it's like... And I'm truly just open a page. It comes out to the Wacky Racers, which is a cartoon that nobody under 60 except Joe and I know of.
Catch the pigeon. Catch the pigeon.
No, and that was Muttley. Yeah, there you go. It is Muttley. And I'm like, oh my fucking God, they made a game of this. And then I'm flipping and I see there's a NES game for, Thunderbirds. So my favorite bit on this podcast is being out of the house,
right?
And being away from management,
all the candy,
and a couple beers with my buddy Joe.
Right, some Budweisers, huh?
But I do love the random video game review of the week. But this week I'm going to incorporate what the review of the game says, as well as how much the game costs. So without further ado...
Oh boy, here goes Jacques. Over to my wall, NES games. He's walking backwards. Moonwalking, some would say. He's pushing my shelf down. It has collapsed. He has picked it back up, restocked the shelves, pulled a game off of the shelf, and now I will guess which game he pulled off of the shelf based on the space that he left on the wall, and it's in the F's. I'm going to guess Faxanadu. Oh, I knew it. That was my first guess, and it was Fester's Quest. I don't know how to spell nothing. So Fester's Quest is a game that is it's made by Sunsoft. It's based on the Addams Family franchise. You play as Uncle Fester. Aliens have invaded the town, and you are the only one, with the help of the rest of the Addams Family, are the only one that can stop them. So it's a fun game, but it's frustrating because the American version of the game, you're given weapons that start off slow and you build up on them over time. But the enemies are just notoriously hard to kill. They take multiple hits, and these are just common enemies on the street. So it's a frustrating game to play. When you die, you have to go back all the way to the beginning of the game. Even though you've made progress in the town, like by defeating bosses and whatever, you still start at the very beginning, so it's very frustrating. However, I understand that the European version of the game lightened the load a little bit so that enemies were easier to kill, so it made it a much more enjoyable experience. You had unlimited continues, so there was that, but there was no password feature, so it's basically like a block out the afternoon if you want to beat Uncle Fester's quest. But it is a good game. The soundtrack is very good. I really do like the soundtrack to the game. It's made by Sunsoft. They also made the Batman video game. They have a just amazing, just fucking awesome, killer 8-bit soundtrack. This is no exception. So I would recommend it. You know, I'd recommend the European version, of course. Of course, you would get the recommended European version over the US.
Come on, don't insult our audience.
I will.
Enough.
Right. So I'm going to guess. Do you want me to guess how many stars?
Yeah. Well, no. First, guess the price. Give me the price.
Card only. I'm going to say $10.
I'm finding it around the $7 range. But
again,
if you add shipping,
but if I add,
$10.
if I went with my first gut instinct, I would have said 8. But yeah, all right.
Your first
Fair
gut
enough.
instinct would have never been a podcast,
Right.
Let's be honest. All right, now, what do you think? What do you think your buddy Pat in his cinder block heavy book has given this?
His tome, the Torah. I'm gonna guess that he gave it 4 stars.
3.5.
Okay.
I will try to read from the book. I can't see. It's
left to right.
The light's better over
Oh
there.
my God.
But almost, spoiler alert, he almost gives you the exact same review.
Well, I mean, I'll read the reflections. Reflections. Fester's Quest is a game I remember hating when I was younger, and I know I wasn't alone. The game was rough at first, confusing, requires some trial and error, and offers little help. But
read the opening statement, though. It's great.
Family-friendly show The Addams Family takes an inexplicably violent turn in a run-and-gun game about Uncle Fester fending off alien invaders. The titular hero does what anyone in this situation would, dusting off the old blunderbuss and taking to the street sewers, as well as some odd-looking 3D sections to beat back the alien assaulters. But it's a great... Yeah.
But your reflection was pretty much dead on.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did study the book, so cover to cover. But this is a great book. Also, I guess I'll throw in like a cheap plug for Pat Contry. He will be appearing at the Retro World Expo in Hartford, Connecticut, which is running October, I think, 14th and 15th that weekend. That's Saturday and Sunday. I think it's the 14th and 15th. He'll be a guest there. So I plan on taking my dream squashers, as you call yours,
the judges would accept Hope Dashers.
Oh, yeah, Hope Dashers. So, yeah, it's a retro expo that happens every year where you go and you play arcade games and you can buy old video games and you can meet these YouTube celebrities because that's all entertainment is now. It's like you find your niche. You find like all the little things that you loved growing up.
Ask my boys who Harrison Ford is. They know Han Solo.
Yeah.
They don't know Harrison Ford. They love Indiana Jones. They don't know Harrison Ford. They know Jacksepticeye is a god, is a rock star. Dan Diamond Minecart might as well be John Lennon.
Right. So yeah.
With that, let's wrap things up a little quick. You got a Netflix Redbox Zune pick of the week?
Ozark.
Yeah,
I just started it last night. It's a 10-episode drama. It's kind of Breaking Bad-esque, but it stars Jason Bateman as a financial advisor who gets into a bit of trouble with some unsavory characters, I might say. He and his partner get into a big mix-up, and his family is forced to leave town. They live in Chicago, and they have to flee to the Ozarks. It was sort of like a plea deal that he made for his life with the unsavory character.
Now, when he fled, was he fleeing in one of those private plane pickup trucks that also has a ramp to get up onto the airplane?
No,
okay,
no, he was just his minivan.
That's my favorite part about that TV show.
About what? Arrested Development?
Arrested Development.
Oh.
The only thing that the family got from the settlement.
the plane lawn,
that has the
staircase.
The staircase.
That thing, right? Okay.
Which you would see that going down 495, and it's like that was my favorite part of Arrested Development.
Yeah, that's great too. Which they are making another. They are working on a 5th season of Arrested Development, but Ozark.
Oh, sorry. My pick is I can't believe I didn't know who Marc Maron was. And a few months ago, when my Netflix pick of the week was just the week after it was Joe's Netflix pick of the week, and Joe's like, "Oh my God, this is so Marc Maron. There's never been a role more for his personality. It's perfect. I watched it, loved it. I'm like, oh, Marc Maron's he's great in it. So I found out again through Joe that he has a podcast. I listened to it, liked it, didn't love it. There was a couple episodes I was like, the couple episodes it was great, but recently I wasn't loving it. And so, I get the Netflix notification because every stand-up that comes up, because I watch so much, I get the notification.
It's like 17 stand-ups every week.
So I turn it on and I watch it, and because I'm not in love with him right now, I was kind of looking forward to having something to, not love about it. And it starts off with like the pre-skit thing. I'm like, oh, that's just easy. That's a cop-out. Are we really doing this? Then it cuts to him walking on stage. He sits down. He takes the mic and he's like, I don't know what he's going to do next. All in, loved it. like it was a really like Marc Maron special, like new release. Just put in Marc Maron. It is really, really good. So that is my pick. Also, it's not my pick of the week, but I think management and I are going to try to power through this week. All 4 Jawses are on Netflix now. So I have absolutely no recollection of 3 and 4. I mean, yeah. Jaws is it. Jaws is, if you hate those kind of movies, you still have to understand it changed movies.
Yeah.
Everything
about it. It was
the
first blockbuster.
I mean, when you just... It's funny because management, is nannying to 2-year-old twins, and with her hand, like she makes like a little sharky thing, and she's like Donna, and the kids go running. I mean, these 2-year-olds still. I mean, that's how impactful 2 notes of music are.
That was just John Williams, by the way. Yeah,
just John. Right, exactly. I mean, so maybe that's a pick next week. Before we sign off this week. Joe, why don't, because Joe has nothing to do with this week's sideshow, why don't you talk about it so at least you're part of it that way?
Right. I needed some much-needed vacationing, so I decided to bow out of this week's sideshow, which is the Arrowverse. Jacques and his friend Sam, who is all of 17, they that's a shorter way of saying it. You're right. They discuss the Arrowverse and the upcoming seasons of Arrow. The upcoming, I know Supergirl's kind of a tangent, but there's Arrow, and then there's the other show with
Flash,
with the Flash, and then
Legends of Tomorrow. I mean, we were when we sat down, we were going to bring in the whole DC TV universe with the cartoon Vixen, with the app only like Titans coming up, but honestly, we went well over time just talking about Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow. We didn't even touch on Gotham and stuff like that, but our friend Sam, pretty much drives the ship. It's a fun episode if you like the tween Arrow universe, which I do very much.
Yeah, and so just to give you a perspective, Jacques, who's not 17, had to find somebody who is 17 to bond with over this love kind of obsession with the Arrowverse.
So I scoured the chat rooms.
Yep.
Randomly found this guy, Sam.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Sam.
Right.
But seriously, Sam knocks out of the park. It's a great episode. So that's this week's sideshow. And Joe, you got a parenting tip of the week?
I would say no.
My parenting tip, because I'm in the car, with the Hope Dashers quite a bit, and it's the classic every single time. We're not in the car. It's like, how long is this going to take? You got your fucking iPad. Does it matter? You can either sit in the house with your iPad or sit in the car. I don't understand the anxiety you have how long it's going to take. You're doing the same thing anyways. But my parenting tip of the week, tell them it's at least going to be twice as long. If it's a half-hour drive, now, granted, my little guys love road trips. We 2 summers ago drove from LA to Boston. They had the time of life. It was great. A couple weeks ago, we drove down to Washington, D.C., played a lot of fun car games, and like the updated version of Station Wagon, because you can't play Station Wagon anymore and have a score of, let's say, more than one going to DC, but they love road trips, but they hate getting in the car. It's 25 minutes from my house to Joe's. How much longer is it going to be? About the same fucking time it took last week. Yeah. But so I just flat out tell them it's going to be 2 or 3 times as long. That's my parenting tip.
That's what Scotty did on one of the episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Scotty from the Star Trek fame. He's
the stereotype drunk Scotsman.
Yes,
named Scotty.
Right. James Doohan. He says to the captain, "Oh, this is going to take at least 2 hours to fix." And then Geordie LaForge, who is on, is that crossover episode where they go through some wormhole or something and they find him? Geordie's like, "But this is only going to take half an hour." It's like, matey, you got to learn something about communication.
Yeah.
You give them more than you think they're going to take.
Thank you, Carnival personnel at Carnival Podcast on Twitter, at Carnival Podcast on Facebook. We're going out with more music from Chip Boy, who I have become a big fan of. YouTube it if you like 8-bit music, if you like video game music. There's might be 2+ hours, 3+ hours at least of content. So you hit the play all button and you go on with the day. It's great background music.
I appreciate the plug, but I'm a little worried about your love for 17-year-old boys.
Don't. I'm trying to think of something funny to say, but hey,
the truth hurts sometimes.
Hey, strangers have the best candy.
All right, and with that, Jacques, do not forget